At exactly 6:43 on a Friday evening, my phone vibrated while I was standing in the checkout line at Costco. I almost ignored it. My cart was overflowing with groceries. Steaks for the weekend. Fresh vegetables. A bottle of wine David loved. We were supposed to celebrate our 21st wedding anniversary the next day. I read 13 words that ended 21 years of marriage. I'm leaving with someone else. Don't try to find me. I stared at the screen. Then another message appeared. It's Megan. My best friend. For a moment, the entire store disappeared. The beeping cash registers. The crying toddler behind me. Everything faded into silence. People always imagine heartbreak as loud. Mine wasn't. It was terrifyingly quiet. I looked down at my phone one more time. Then I typed only 2 words. Good luck. I hit send. I paid for my groceries, loaded everything into my SUV, and drove home. Not because I didn't care. Because I already knew something David didn't. Something that was about to destroy every plan he thought he'd made. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 47 years old. I live just outside Madison, Wisconsin, in a quiet neighborhood where everyone waves, everyone knows your dog, and everyone thinks they know your marriage. For 21 years, people called David and me the perfect couple. Maybe we encouraged that illusion. Maybe we believed it ourselves. David owned a small architecture firm. I worked as a forensic accountant. He designed buildings. I followed money. Funny how those 2 careers eventually collided. The drive home took 18 minutes. Not once did I cry. I replayed every conversation from the last year. The late meetings. Weekend conferences. Business dinners. The sudden interest in expensive watches. The new cologne. The extra time at the gym. Every excuse suddenly fit together like pieces of a puzzle I'd never realized I was solving. When I pulled into the driveway, his black BMW was gone. So were 2 large suitcases from our bedroom. He hadn't written the text on impulse. He had packed first. The house looked untouched. Family photos still covered the hallway. Our anniversary cards from previous years sat inside a decorative basket. His favorite coffee mug remained beside the sink. Only one thing was different. His wedding ring. It sat perfectly centered on the kitchen island. Underneath it, a folded sheet of paper. I opened it. 3 sentences. Emily, this isn't your fault. Please don't make this harder than it has to be. Actually laughed. A short, quiet laugh. Not because it was funny. Because the man who had just abandoned 21 years of marriage believed he was being kind. I carried every grocery bag into the kitchen. Put the milk in the refrigerator. Placed the frozen food in the freezer. Organized everything exactly where it belonged. Routine has a strange way of keeping panic away. When I finished, I poured myself a glass of ice water. Then I walked upstairs. His closet was half empty. Mine wasn't. Interesting. He thought he had taken everything important. He hadn't. His home office door stood open. David never left it open. I stepped inside. Blueprints covered the drafting table. Awards lined the shelves. Framed magazine covers celebrated his projects. To anyone else, it looked like the office of a successful businessman. To me, it looked rushed. One drawer wasn't fully closed. I pulled it open. A leather planner. David hated digital calendars. He wrote everything by hand. Appointments. Meetings. Travel dates. I flipped through the pages. Most entries looked ordinary. Until next Thursday. Written in blue ink. Move into Lake House. Lake House. We didn't own a lake house. At least, I didn't think we did. My phone buzzed again. Megan. I let it ring. Then another call. Ignored. A voicemail appeared seconds later. I didn't listen. Not yet. People reveal far more when they think you aren't responding. I opened my laptop. Logged into our shared financial dashboard. Everything appeared normal. Checking account. Savings. Retirement. Investment portfolio. Nothing missing. That surprised me. If David planned to disappear, why hadn't he emptied the accounts? Then I noticed something. A small business account I'd almost forgotten. Carter Design Holdings. Balance. $11.72. Last month. It had contained nearly $186,000. I frowned. Transferred. 3 days earlier. Destination account. Unavailable. Now. My heart finally started racing. Not because he'd left me. Because David had done something incredibly stupid. He'd moved company funds. Without realizing whose name still appeared first on every legal document. At 9:14 p.m. Someone knocked on my front door. 3 slow knocks. I looked through the peephole. It wasn't David. It wasn't Megan. It was a middle-aged man in a navy suit, holding a thick manila envelope. When I opened the door, he asked only one question. Mrs. Emily Carter? Yes. You've been served. I accepted the envelope. The return address made my stomach tighten. A law firm in downtown Madison. Were divorce papers. Prepared weeks ago. Signed by David. Nearly a month before he ever sent that text. I looked up at the process server. When were these filed? He checked his clipboard. 26 days ago, ma'am. 26 days. David hadn't decided to leave today. He'd been planning it for almost a month. And somehow, I had never seen it coming. I closed the front door. Looked down at the papers. Then quietly whispered to myself. Game on. I carried the divorce papers into the kitchen. The house was silent again. 21 years of marriage. Reduced to a stack of legal documents inside a manila envelope. I poured another glass of water and sat at the island. The first page wasn't what caught my attention. The last page did. David had signed it. 28 days earlier. He hadn't texted me because he'd made a decision. He texted me because he thought everything was already finished. He honestly believed I would read the papers, cry, and quietly disappear. He didn't know me very well anymore. The next morning I called only one person. Laura Bennett. She wasn't just an attorney. She specialized in business litigation. More importantly, she'd been my college roommate. She answered before the second ring. Emily. You sound serious. I need your help. 20 minutes later, she was sitting across from me in my kitchen, reading every page without saying a word. When she finished, she looked up. Did he really text you before having these served? Yes. She slowly shook her head. That might be the biggest mistake he makes. I frowned. What do you mean? Laura slid the papers back toward me. He assumes you'll react emotionally. And we're not going to. For the next 3 hours, we reviewed everything. Our home, business records, investment accounts, insurance policies, retirement funds. Then Laura stopped at one document. Carter Design Holdings. She smiled. This is interesting. I leaned closer. What? She turned the ownership certificate toward me. You're still the majority shareholder. I saw that. No. She said quietly. I don't think you understand. She pointed toward one paragraph buried in the corporate agreement. Any transfer exceeding $50,000 required written approval from the majority owner. I felt my heartbeat slow. David had transferred $186,000. Without my signature. Without my approval. Laura looked directly at me. Emily. I think your husband has a much bigger problem than divorce. That afternoon, we visited the company's bank. The manager already knew me. Mrs. Carter. How can I help? Laura handled the conversation. We need copies of every transfer made during the last 6 months. The manager disappeared into the back office. He returned carrying a thick folder. Every transfer. Every authorization. Every digital approval. Laura quietly examined each page. Then she stopped. Emily. Did you authorize this? She pointed to an electronic signature. It looked exactly like mine. Except, it wasn't. I knew my own handwriting. Someone had copied it. Perfectly. Laura didn't say another word until we reached the parking lot. Then she closed the folder. That's forgery. The word echoed inside my head. Not betrayal. Not divorce. Forgery. Back home. My phone finally rang again. David. For the first time. I answered. Emily. His voice sounded unusually calm. I wanted to make sure you got the papers. I did. Silence. I know this is difficult. No. I replied quietly. It's becoming very interesting. He hesitated. What does that mean? It means I'm reading everything very carefully. Another pause. Then his tone changed. I don't want this to get ugly. I almost smiled. Neither do I. But ugly isn't always a choice. I ended the call. Laura looked at me. He knows. What? He heard something in your voice. What kind of something? The kind that scares guilty people. Later that evening, I finally listened to Megan's voicemail. Her voice was shaking. Emily. I know you probably hate me. But David hasn't told you everything. My hand froze. He said you'd already agreed to sell the company. I only found out yesterday that wasn't true. My stomach tightened. Sell the company? What company? Another lie. The voicemail continued. I didn't know he was using your signature. I stopped breathing. How could she know about that? Unless she had seen something. Laura replayed the message twice. Then looked at me. I think she knows where the money went. The following morning, an overnight courier arrived. No return address. Inside was a small flash drive. No letter. No explanation. Just a yellow sticky note. 3 handwritten words. Check Project Horizon. Laura plugged the drive into her laptop. A folder opened instantly. Hundreds of files. Invoices. Contracts. Property purchases. Bank transfers. Then, a video. Recorded by a security camera inside David's office. The timestamp showed 3 weeks earlier. David wasn't alone. Megan sat across from him. Between them, stacks of paperwork. David pointed at one document and laughed. By the time Emily figures it out, we'll already be living in Colorado. The room fell silent. Laura paused the video. Then she whispered, they just handed us the case. At that exact moment, someone began pounding on my front door. Not knocking. Pounding. 3 loud blows. Then another. I walked to the entryway and looked through the peephole. My heart skipped a beat. David was standing on the porch. But he wasn't alone. Behind him were 2 detectives. David looked as surprised as I felt. The 2 detectives standing behind him weren't there to support him. They were watching him. One of them stepped forward and showed a badge. Mrs. Carter? Yes. I'm Detective Harris. This is Detective Monroe. We'd like to ask both of you a few questions. I unlocked the door but left the security chain in place. What is this about? Detective Harris looked briefly at David. We received a report concerning possible financial fraud involving Carter Design Holdings. David's face lost its color. Only for a second. Then he recovered. There must be some misunderstanding. Laura stepped beside me. My client won't answer questions without counsel present. The detectives nodded politely. We're not here to arrest anyone. Not today. David glanced at me. For the first time since sending that text. He looked nervous. The detectives asked to review a few corporate documents. Laura handed them copies of everything. Ownership records. Transfer approvals. Bank statements. The forged signatures. Nobody raised their voice. Nobody argued. The paperwork spoke for itself. After 20 minutes, Detective Harris closed the folder. Mr. Carter. We recommend you don't move any additional company funds. David forced a smile. I have nothing to hide. The detective simply replied. I hope that's true. Then both officers left. The moment the patrol car disappeared, David finally exploded. You called the police? I didn't. You hired a lawyer? Yes. You went through my files? I folded my arms. You went through my bank account first. Silence. He knew I was right. David took one slow breath. This doesn't have to end like this. I looked directly into his eyes. It already did. No. We can fix it. I almost laughed. Fix it. You filed for divorce almost a month ago. You forged my signature. You transferred company money. And you moved in with my best friend. What exactly are we fixing? He had no answer. 3 days later, the court granted Laura's emergency motion. Every company account was temporarily frozen. Every property sale required judicial approval. Every financial record had to be preserved. David couldn't touch a dollar without permission. His architect firm stopped overnight. Employees began calling. Clients demanded answers. Investors pulled out. The perfect future he'd planned started collapsing. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was Megan. This time, I answered. She sounded exhausted. Emily. I'm leaving him. I didn't respond. He lied to me. I know. He said you already wanted the divorce. I know. He said the company belonged to him. I know. She started crying. I didn't know about the forged signatures. I swear. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Finally she whispered, I'm sending you something. Seconds later, an email arrived. Attached were dozens of screenshots, private messages, hidden bank accounts, property contracts. One message stood out. David had written it 6 weeks earlier. Once the money clears, Emily won't be able to stop us. Laura looked at me. That's intent. 6 weeks later, the courtroom was completely full. David sat beside his attorney. He looked older, more tired. Across the aisle, I sat with Laura. Neither of us spoke. Judge Eleanor Watkins entered. Everyone stood. The hearing began. David's attorney argued first. This is simply a difficult divorce. Laura stood. No, Your Honor. This is a financial deception disguised as a divorce. She projected the bank transfers, the forged signatures, the security footage, Megan's screenshots. The courtroom became silent. Judge Watkins slowly removed her glasses. She looked directly at David. Did you authorize these transfers without the majority owner's approval? David hesitated. His attorney whispered something. Finally, he answered, yes. The judge nodded once. And these signatures? Another long silence. They weren't hers. Those 3 words changed everything. 2 months later, the divorce became final. The court awarded me full ownership of Carter Design Holdings. David was ordered to repay every unauthorized transfer. The district attorney opened a separate criminal investigation into the forged documents. As for Megan, she testified truthfully, then disappeared from my life forever. I never contacted her again. Not out of anger. Simply because some chapters don't deserve another page. One autumn morning, I walked through the company's newly renovated headquarters. Employees smiled as I passed. Projects were growing again. Clients had returned. Life had returned. A young employee asked me something I'll never forget. How did you stay so calm after everything? I smiled. I wasn't calm. I was careful. Because anger makes people react. But evidence changes everything. Sometimes people think the most powerful words I ever wrote were, good luck. They weren't. The most powerful words came months later. When the judge looked at me and said, Mrs. Carter, judgment is entered in your favor. And in that moment, I realized something. The day my husband walked away, he thought he was taking my future with him. I said, he left me with something far more valuable. A chance to rebuild my life. Without ever looking back.